Good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's City of Cedar Falls Committee of the Whole meeting for Monday, April 21st. I will now call this meeting to order. Great timing. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Schultz. Latta.
Here.
Cruz.
Here.
Hawbaker.
Here.
Ganfield. Chrisman.
Here.
Dunn.
Here.
Councilmember Schultz absent.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And we'll move to item number 1, South Main Sanitary Sewer Project Update. We've got a presentation from Jay Schrage. A quick update for everybody. So we had this come back first, probably close to a year ago, for initial discussion, some of the initial numbers, with some feedback from the community, wanted to look at and dig into a lot more of the numbers, so we really understood what the overall impact was, beyond just the tapping fee, but also for the connection fee and the remediation of existing septic on the site. So we kind of took it back, started working a lot with staff, going through the numbers, looking at what options are to try and put together what's a more realistic, a more tenable option to bring back to council to look at. So did that, and still working on it. This is still draft phase, wanting to run through with everybody, put out the public notice that we'd be having this meeting. So tonight's meeting, and we had a chance to meet with some of the residents last week on it. So tonight's meeting is to really get a sense from everybody on, do we want to move forward with the project? Are there continued concerns, thoughts? We have the whole section. It's broken down into 3 areas. Director Schrage will cover a lot of this. We do have the option to just want to move forward with 1, 2, or 3, or multiple of the areas, none of the areas. So tonight's really to just get information to everybody, get a sense of where everyone's feeling, and see what the general direction we want to go with is. So with that, take it away, Chase.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. So what I'll first do is kind of go over a little bit of the background leading up to today. The project goal was to extend gravity sewer to properties that are currently unserved. The entirety of the 3 areas combined is a total of 18 parcels, covers approximately 23 acres. Of those 18 parcels, there's 13 existing homes on them. And there too, there's a few properties that have substandard systems, as you can see, similar to the photo there. That we're trying to eliminate. And this would provide for a potential future connection or immediate connections, depending on the property owner's choice on that. So with that, we'll look at the 3 areas there. This is probably a map that you are familiar with from left to right. Areas 1 shown in red, area 2, and then area 3 shown in green there. Areas 1 and is pretty straightforward. It's basically the cost estimate to extend the infrastructure, which you can kind of see in the background there, to serve those properties in that area. It would be divided amongst the acreage in which it serves, and that's how you come up with the tapping fee for that area. Area 2, the uniqueness about Area 2 is you can see kind of the white box there that covers through Area 2 and Area 3. Is when we were looking at this area, it's kind of a low spot back there. Is could a future home be built back there? Yes, they would have to have a lift station in their basement to serve that area. So what we actually did was keep that area in there, but what we did was reduce the total cost estimate by the acreage in which that serves. So that was actually a cost deduction that the city took off of that. And then the last parcel on the far right there that's in the green area, parcel 119, is actually already connected today. So that would be a deduction as well. So when you look at the 3 areas, like I said, area 1, the cost estimate was approximately $140,000, serving almost 6 acres there, which comes up to be approximately $23,960 per acre. Area 2, that estimated cost value, that's already has the deduction off of that. So that's why it's shown at $52,000. It's serving 5.77 acres, which with the deduction drew the tapping fee down to just over $9,000 per acre. And then area 3 there, similarly, that cost estimate reflects the deduction already from this previous map. So it'd be all of that green area within that white box. That came out to just over $149,000, serving that 13.36 acres, which comes out to just over $11,000 per acre for the tapping fee. And then it's just a summary off to the right there for each of the 3 areas, and then the total city deductions that were removed from areas 2 and 3. And the total project cost with all 3 areas combined is $425,000. And then we're also looking at what we're anticipating for easement values permanent and temporary, would be approximately $185,000. And that obviously would depend on, when we go through the easement process moving forward, the appropriate fair market land value and any other hindrances on the property, such as fences or trees. Those would be compensated as well on top of what's shown here as a raw land value. So this is a project summary, cost as it relates to cost. We currently have a design contract with AECom. That's for the $107,000 there. We have an easement contract with JCG Land Services. And then, like I said before, what we're anticipating for the easement land costs, those three categories have been always identified as areas that the city was going to absorb those costs. They weren't going to be passed on to the tapping fee areas. Traditionally, there's three tapping districts in Cedar Falls. There's a Northwest Interceptor, there's a Cherrywood Interceptor, and then a few years ago we did the West 27th Street Extension when the high school came in to serve both the West Fork property as well as the school property. All those costs were incurred and part of the tapping fee, the design, the right-of-way, and the construction. So traditionally, it's all-encompassing of all costs it takes to bring the infrastructure out there. The construction costs, like I said, just over the $425,000 for all three areas combined. And then if you add the deductions shown in the white boxes, both Area 2 in the blue and Area 3 in the green, as well as the Parcel 119 that is already connected, the total cost off of that is just over the $103,000. And then total them all up for the total project costs, and then what the city would be in it for. That's just kind of representative of the tapping fee the city would only be recouping just over $320,000. So coming out of the meeting from last July, we heard concerns about construction costs, inflation, those types of things. When can we secure a cost on the maximum end if bids come in high? So internally talking with staff, what we did was set up what we're going to call the maximum tapping fee. Those costs cannot go up. If bids come in high, the city would absorb any cost in excess of those $23,960 for Area 1. And similarly for Areas 2 and 3, those would be the maximum value set. If bids come in below that, that number would go down. And then a reminder that previously it's been conveyed that the tapping fees could be spread over 10 years. And what we did was we had conversations with CFU and placing this on their utility bill. So depending on what the individual's tapping fee is, we have a mechanism to spread it over 10 years for that specific property. In regards to that connection fee agreement, there would be a 3% interest on that. This is just a map showing the tapping districts, and then the associated maximum tapping fees per acre is shown below. So another thing we looked at is private property owner costs as it relates to if an individual would come in to connect at a later date after this project. What type of costs would they incur in such that the demolition or decommission of their existing septic system and then potentially running a pipe a new service all the way to their home. So what we did is we laid it out in three different scenarios. So scenario one would be if a property owner would elect to connect at the time of construction, the city could include that work under their existing contract with the contractor and do that work at no charge to the resident. And what I mean by no charge is the charge for the decommissioning and running that new line to connect to their home. The property owner would still be responsible for the tapping fee for their parcel. Scenario two would be is if a property owner, there's no forced connection, obviously. So when the septic system were to fail or if it's inspected by the Black Hawk County Health Department, normally that happens at the point of transfer of the land that it is inspected. If it were to come back that it has failed, that would be the point in which the property owner would have to connect. But with this project, we're not forcing anyone to connect at the time of the project. So scenario 2 would be as if a property owner elected to connect, say within, as an example, within 10 years or 15 years, that property owner would be eligible up to $5,000 reimbursement for those costs in which I outlined previously, the cost or the decommissioning of their existing septic system and running the new service line to their house if it so needed it. Those would be all eligible costs for reimbursement. Scenario 3 is post 20 years. If a property owner comes in after the 20-year mark, that is at which point there would be no reimbursement or no connection fee agreement where we could spread it out over the 10-year period. And then down below there's just what I explained earlier, the connection fee agreement. We could incorporate it as part of the CFU bill. It'd be spread over the 10 years, and then it would have 3% interest annually on that. So the schedule moving forward, if this project were to continue, would be we would have to adopt the residential septic to sanitary sewer policy, and I believe most of you have seen that. If not, it is in front of you tonight, in which explains all of the scenarios in which I've outlined tonight regarding the reimbursements and the connection upon the project at no charge to the resident. And then after that would be easement negotiations. That would take place the rest of this calendar year, and then we'd look to have a project letting this next winter and potentially build the project next summer. So with that, I just have the one motion shown up there tonight, and as Mayor outlined, obviously if this motion were to be voted down, staff would take that as direction to basically terminate the project and stop working on it. If council would elect to motion to move a specific area 1, 2, or 3, or individually to move it forward, we can take that as well. But I'd entertain any questions also.
Thank you, Director. And at this point, open it up to questions, comments from council.
Mr. Schragi, we've talked about this a lot, and maybe you've heard this before, but when it is the removal of the septic tank, is the the seepage bed able to stay, or is that got to be removed too?
That would not be part of the removal. Under scenario 1, we would only be looking to remove the tank, the leach field lines, or depending on what type of septic they have, we would only be removing the tank and then reconnecting them to the sanitary sewer. If they do have a traditional leach field, those leach fields would remain in place.
Okay, so there's no consequence to having them stay?
No.
Okay.
Yep, Counselor.
Thank you for the presentation. Chase, I understand there's some new septics that were recently put in. If they choose to keep those, are they allowed to maintain them?
Yes, and until at which time the county were to come in and say your septic is no longer functioning properly, you need to replace it. If it's normal maintenance, pumping, or if there's a broken lid or something, yes, they would be able to maintain it.
Can they put in a new leach line?
I guess that's something that I don't traditionally see from the county. It's if a leach line has failed or they need additional linear footage, they would need to replace the whole septic system.
And would that be allowed?
Would that be allowed? That would not be allowed. That would be a significant repair.
So that's a new term. What triggers a significant repair? 50% of the cost?
That would be up to the county. So the county comes in and they determine whether your septic is functioning properly or not. If they come back and say this property owner's septic is no longer functioning, they need to replace it. That is what would trigger it. Because any type of repair would have to be approved from the county.
Okay. Then another concern, you have service areas based on acreages. And to me, the usage of a property of a sewer system would be based on, let's say, number of bedrooms or number of occupants in a property. The acreage doesn't really mean anything. You can have an acre lot with one house. I don't know that many of these could be subdivided, but I think it'd be more appropriate to calculate costs based on number of bedrooms or number of residents. That'd be more equitable.
I can jump in here, Counselor. The city is unable by the Constitution to impose use taxes, and that's exactly what you're talking about. That's why it's in the nature of a special assessment, which means it's based upon area, and this way it's acreage.
I can kind of speak to, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but that was some of how the areas were designed, easements. It was trying to make sure the cost impact on residents as close as possible was tried to be evened out across the homeowners based on impacts for easements, what they're getting paid for those, and the total cost to connect. I don't think we actually ran the numbers on a per household basis, but the goal was to try and find the most equitable to split some of that. And it seems like this one came pretty close to trying to get a lot of those households as close as we could get to being a pretty level split with them.
Area 1, 2, and 3 are very distinctly different in cost per acre. And are we coming up with that just by the linear footage of the service lines? Is that the predominance?
Yeah, you can see in Area 1, the sewer has to come from the west a lot further than it does in, say, Area 2. It's right at the rear of the property line. So Area 1, there's a lot more linear footage of pipe to be installed and manholes and such. So that's why the cost is larger for Area 1.
Then the properties that don't have easements being paid for, they're going to bear more of a cost. Can you explain that? My understanding?
Yes, you are correct, but what we did was we tried to lay it out that a homeowner would not have to pay any more than what a traditional new septic may cost for replacement in regards to the tapping fee. So yes, you are correct. Properties that do not have easement acquisition on them would not receive any additional benefit from land payment in regards to the project.
Has that been explained to the residents so they specifically know, each person will know exactly what they're on the hook for?
Yep.
Do they have the, has there been a public comment meeting with them specifically?
We've held individual meetings with property owners, and we've had public informational meetings. This has gone back
Right.
a year or more ago, but yes.
There's probably been many years of
In
those.
regards to the property owner specific credentials regarding easement costs and tapping fee, yes.
I think back when we had those initial meetings, didn't have all the information on total cost of the project, but also then at that time weren't discussing some of the connection costs. And that's where, with new information with this, was looking at how do we help cover some of those costs with the, either doing it as a part of the connection cost and we cover that during construction, or the $5,000 stipend to try and help cover some of that connection cost on site.
And I remember a number of the residents, maybe one or two for sure, that were really concerned about trees, and we rerouted, or a location to build a house as well. Was a
Yep.
concern?
Yeah, so those comments are general, I would say, to Area 3, more on the north end. So we did stake the alignment again after the July meeting. I know David and the design engineer firm had met with some property owners out there to try to minimize the impacts of whether it's fence or trees. And obviously, you know, the more we push the pipe to the rear of the property, the more pipe materials used and the cost of construction. So yes, we did stake it and meet with them to try to minimize everything that we could. Regarding there's one parcel that intends to build a home in the future. So we've been in contact with them numerous times on plans on maybe where the house would sit and depth of basement, different things like that. So those are all things that we could work out in the final design. And also, so the sewer trunk line would miss where their proposed home would be, obviously.
Okay, I don't want to keep talking here, but
I was going to open it up to some other ones.
Mr. Mayor?
Yep.
Chase, can you clarify, you said that if a septic were to fail, obviously there's not a mechanism for the resident to replace. Is that under the assumption that this project moves forward?
Yeah, those are assumptions that
I'm sorry, go ahead.
if any area will move forward, that's an assumption.
What would happen if for example, one zone of this moved forward and another one didn't, in the area that this didn't move forward in that scenario, would they have the ability to then repair, replace?
Yep.
And the deciding factor on that, if we moved this project forward, is coming from the county, not from the city?
No, our city ordinance states if a sewer is within 200 feet of the property line. So if areas in, let's say, Area 3, if public sewer is not available within 200 feet, they would not be required to connect.
So there's a scenario then where, let's say a septic fails in Area 2, a parcel abutting that could, if their septic failed, be forced to tie in and not be able to repair.
Do you have a specific example?
I'm just asking.
Not unless they're within 200 feet of the sewer main. So,
Hold on. We'll bring it back to public comment, but first let the council.
I'm just curious whether that's a scenario here. I guess I hadn't considered that until you'd mentioned it, so.
Keep a note.
I know I'm keeping you at face value, but
if one of the areas, and Ron, correct me if I'm wrong, but if one of the areas were not moved forward tonight, or none of the areas, if one of the septics fails, the city would not be requiring a connection.
thanks.
Thanks,
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yeah.
Director Schrage, thanks for your presentation. There's a couple of questions we've discussed a little bit before, but I just wanted to get clarification. Between areas 1 and 2, if there was a line connecting the two existing, or the proposed, pipes, it would be shorter linear foot. But if we changed that, you'd have to go back and redesign that with AECOM, basically wasting that 107, or a portion of that 107,000. Is that correct?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it'd be extremely costly to do. That is something that we can review, but there's a couple of homeowners that have been in here for quite some time, some in excess of 30 years. This is the fourth time that they've seen this project come forward, and it has been unsuccessful each time, with really 4 different alignments. So there's a lot of different alignments we can do. Does it present different costs for those alignments on the properties? Sure. So what we did was try to balance it with what's shown today, but that is something that we could look into.
And I appreciate that reiteration. I was at some of those public meetings early on, and obviously this being the kind of the third go-around of many years where it continues to fail. So this is kind of the next best offering, and at this juncture, it would probably be costly to change that alignment. The question I guess I'm coming up with now is, if within 200 feet of an existing city sewer, they are forced to connect, do we service all of these properties within 200 feet? And I guess that's not a fair question. If Area 1 were to pass, what property on down the line is still 200 feet away and could replace their own septic without us forcing their hand?
So maybe I could help with a little bit of that. You got to remember that the 200 feet would also include, it would have to be a direct line to the sewer. So if there was a private property in between, we wouldn't consider that 200 feet because those individual property owners don't have any means to negotiate that easement or go through it. So
They don't have the power we do.
yeah.
Okay,
So
thanks for that clarification. Yeah, I think I've heard mixed opinions, as I'm sure you've heard many of them too. So I appreciate those clarifications. I think at this juncture, we're kind of looking at what's the most effective. I mean, we've essentially got an island around this area within town as Cedar Falls has grown around them. So it's no longer really the outskirts where it would be, septic wouldn't be put in this area if it were open field that were developed today, as referenced by the Sands addition that went in. So I do think that we're kind of stuck in that needing to hook up at some point. I'm just curious if, kicking it down the road is just kicking it down the road. If we just kind of have to take this and adjust. So anyway, we'll hear what the public says on it and make a final assessment.
Thank you, Counselor. And I know, can't speak quick, I'll let Councilmember Ladd, because you were in some of those meetings too. Got some of the written ones, some here, so I won't speak for them. We did have 2 others that I don't think, or 3 others that are not here tonight. One that was talking through the numbers, I'd say neutral on it, seeing that we've changed some of the impact and trying to buy down some of the cost. And then one that was kind of just waiting to see some of the more details, but also knows kind of need to connect. So I don't know if you have any other thoughts on those, but I just know they can't be here and they didn't submit a written comment, but just wanted to include some of that.
Yeah, I think we received one other email this afternoon from somebody in Zone 1. Otherwise, I'm not sure that I've seen anything beyond.
Yep, that one this afternoon. If you didn't see it, was in support of the project.
Mr. Mayor,
Yep.
I'm going to segue off Councilman Ganfield's thoughts there. So I like how we've mentioned that this is the fourth time that this has been brought before council. Obviously, long ago, this is when this started. For me, okay, in these instances, I feel like you have to stay focused. And so for me, during this time, and it's not to take away from anybody's thoughts on the matter or experience, but for me, this is a public health situation. So yes, can septics work just fine? Yes, they can, and they do. Does everyone always maintain their septics? Not necessarily. Was that part of town, not even that long ago, that part of town would have been the edge of town, or if not the country, but it's not anymore. It's surrounded by development and people who live there. And either way, it's very close to, I believe the whole town pretty much is in the dry run watershed. So I guess the reason I wanted to segue off of Councilman Ganfield's is, I appreciate when he made reference of, do we just kick the can down the road? I guess for me, work has been done, money has been spent. We're here a year after this body, I believe we talked about it when this current council first was elected. It wasn't long after that. I appreciate Councilman Latta and the mayor's, work with citizens. I appreciate staff's work. To me, it's just, I don't want to kick it down the road, but I guess I'm betting we all have I don't know that I'm going to change any mind, but I just want to make sure that that's the way my mind's going is, I don't think this is ever going to be a perfect scenario where you get 100% of the people saying, yep, let's go ahead and do it. But it's not, to me, just about the folks who live there. It's if you have sewage leaking into a watershed, that's not good. And also, for the future, people may not want it, but there are people who do want it, and they're kind of being held hostage. I don't want to say hostage because that belittles that term, but they're not able to get what they're hoping to get because of decisions that the council has made or will make. So, I think we all have our thoughts on the matter. Those are mine.
Thank you, Counselor. Any other discussion, questions?
Mr. Schrage, have we delved into what grants might be available for the whole project through health and safety or various things? Because I know nowadays, the more you dig for grants, the more you find. Would any of this qualify?
Not to my knowledge, and I don't know if the design firm knows of any, but I don't know of any for conversion of septics to connection.
Do you have another one? You're new to one?
Well, I'm just struggling with telling someone that they got to pay $23,000 an acre to fix their septic. I know septic tanks work well. I know there's one individual and maybe more that really needs to be tapped in and connected with city sewer. Septic tanks, have to be maintained. There's not an option. People maintain their septics because it's an essential part of their household functioning. I'd just like to see a way for the city to cover more of this tapping fee. $321,000 is a huge expense for people that don't have it in their budget. And even if you spread it out over 10 years max, that's, and even 3% interest, it's still, we should find a way to help the people. I mean, it's not their fault the city grew around them. So I guess with that, how do we determine if we want to vote for Area 1 only?
Are we
And-
going to take public comment?
Yeah, so we'll do
That's
that.
good.
We'll do
Okay.
public comment
Yep, yep.
before we kind of go toward that. Something I will say, political discussion for us. I think staff's tried to, as much as possible, balance cost impact to the resident with cost impacts to taxpayers overall. We politically can decide to cover as much of this project as we want. We could say we're going to do the whole thing, we're going to cover 100%, and then really that burden goes to the overall taxpayers. We're just essentially spreading the cost out among everyone to pay for the project. So really, that's a political discussion for us, is I think to this point, staff's kind of tried to balance the direct impact to the residents. I know our goal, working with Councilmember Latha and staff, was to try and make the cost to do this for each resident about what it would be to replace a septic anyway, to try and make it about what it would be if they just had to go ahead with a new septic. But that is a political discussion, is do we want to pay for more of it? That goes to the budget. It doesn't impact the general fund, but it does impact our refuse rates, which is relevant because we'll be talking about that. Well, not refuse rates, excuse me, sewer rates and water rates. So that is a discussion that we can have too, is the overall cost burden and if we want to cover more of it.
Mr. Mayor, Director Shoggy, at what point would they find out that final number that they would need to pay?
So what you've seen in the slides was the maximum. That'd be worst case scenario for a tapping fee. The bid day is really when we would know if the bids came in below what's shown on the slides tonight, then that tapping fee would actually be drawn down, and we could do that calculation right during after bids.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and then we will, yep, go ahead.
Can I just make comment as to what you said? I understand and I agree, we could politically have that conversation, but we also, I think, need to remember that would be a precedent that was set, and there are other areas of town that we could be having this same conversation about. So I think it's good that we remember it's not just this area and we're done. There's other sections, and so that overall cost, if we decided to set that precedent, could be, remember that.
Good point. Thank you, Counselor.
Mr. Mayor. Director Shoggy, just so I have it in my head, at least from reading the draft that was provided too, the idea is that ultimately, and I think rightfully so, we want to make sure that as many people are hooked up to sanitary sewer as possible and to try to move away from septic, in particular in this area, right? That's the policy. Is that fair?
Correct.
And so the scenarios that are outlined, and maybe I'm oversimplifying it, but essentially that if the homeowner opts with scenario one, they can take advantage of sort of more cost savings at the beginning, or they can delay and keep their septic for that 20-year period and then only avail themselves to the up to $5,000 reimbursement. And then after 20 years, you're just assuming the risk of whatever the replacement cost at the time. So there's a lot of choice left for the homeowner at that point. Is that fair?
Correct.
Okay. All right.
And I know Mr. Griffin's here, but I think it's been noted in our annual inspection by the DNR, being proactive to remove septics on the last 2 inspections. Is that correct? 3?
Yeah, and I think that was actually part of the basis for moving forward. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but it was DNR sort of saying you should get this moving, right? Okay, thank you.
And Counselor? Any other discussion, questions now? Otherwise, before we make motions, I'll go ahead and open up public comment if everyone's okay with it. That way we can take that into account as we're deciding what motions we want to make. Okay, at this point then, we'll open up the public comment. We'll have up to 5 minutes to speak on. And then I'll try and just kind of take down questions as they come up and then circle
And I'm going
back.
to apologize, I'm going to reference some notes because there's a lot of thoughts I have on this.
Just name and address, please.
Yes, Elizabeth Ackerson and my husband James and I own 4111 South Main. You'll apologize because actually I don't know what zone my house is in, and I'm going to apologize in advance because I am super emotional about this. This has been ongoing for the past year and a half. I bought my home in 2021. I put a large amount of money on my home. My husband and I saved for years. I am a business owner. I am a healthcare worker. I am a Cedar Valley native, and so is my husband. All of my children go to school here. I actually have a senior graduating this year. We purchased this home. with the understanding we would not have to touch our septic system for years, because as a part of the sale, it was required that the previous owner actually replace the septic system because it was no longer up to code. So therein is issue one for me, because I purchased this home. None of this was ever mentioned. I am 37, my husband is 34. Potentially I could live in my home. We purchased this as our forever home, by the way. We have 3 children ranging in ages from 6 to 17. We purchased this home with the amount of land because we both love Cedar Falls. We are part of this community. I own a business in this community. I feel strongly about this community, but we wanted land. That was the whole goal here, okay? So we purchased our home with this land, thinking everything would be good and well because the septic was just replaced. No part was this ever mentioned, only to find out 2 years later, oh, we may potentially not only have to do that, but have to pay a large portion. I have a daughter going to college next year. I would like to know how any of you can look me in my eye and tell me you think it's totally okay for you to decide how I spend my money. Money I have saved for decades and years to send my daughter to college, by the way. I had my daughter at 19. I worked for every penny I have, but I obviously didn't, have a ton of opportunity to save for college. And now that I'm finally at that place, apparently it's within somebody else, not my own control, where I can, be at cost for tens of thousands of dollars, or I can spread it over 10 years at a 3% interest rate. Not that I'm agreeing to a 3% interest rate, not with my husband's signature, just somebody else's. So we're really at your mercy here. And I understand the concerns that have been placed, but I also think there's a lot of misinformation being spread here. And I will say, when I sat in my meeting, I've had one meeting, by the way, with Chase and David, my husband and I did one. On that meeting itself, I believe my property is a property that would have an easement, by the way. The easement would run in the middle of my backyard, like right where my kids play. So when I asked about the easement, could it be moved? Could it be this? Could it be that? And I don't know anything about this. This is not my area of expertise by any means. I said, could this be moved? They said yes. They threw about different various options. Nothing was set in stone. And when I said, well, what if I'm not okay with having an easement on my property? I believe it was David that told me that they could then think about eminent domain. So I'm going to just let that sink in. As a homeowner in the city of Cedar Falls in this community, can you imagine you're asking questions because you don't know anything about excavating or digging city sewers, and you're met with, well, we could just, maybe invoke some eminent domain. Like, how violating that felt to me sitting in that meeting, I can't even explain to you. I left that meeting more confused than ever. And I would like to think I'm a fairly intelligent, rational human being. I had to have my husband sit down and explain all the additional costs laid out. My husband actually works for Blackhawk County, by the way, worked in excavating for years, both residentially and commercial. He wrote me a list of concerns he has about this project. One of them being that when we went through our meeting, I left with no idea what my cost would be, not one bit. I think I was offered, correct me if I'm wrong, because I've yet to see any other numbers since that meeting, by the way. No numbers at all. Thinking they were offering us $5,000-ish for the easement, and that would basically negate the cost. At that point, it was being broached that we would have to dig up our own septic and whatever that goes into it. What was not included, and I'm going to have to reference this because yet again, I work on people, not sewers. So my husband basically said in this, he had some real issues with the fact that no one has honestly explained to any of the homeowners the cost for them to tie into the new main. At the time this was originally broached, and all of us got our one meeting, which for many of us has been the only meeting we've had since then. We were told that, we would have to hire our own private contractor after the sewer main was installed to have our sewer service line installed from our house to the new main line. And that we would also have to pay to have our old septic tanks pumped out and dissolved out of pocket. And this was to be on top of the tapping fee. And then also during our original meeting, we were given a map with the proposed line going directly across the middle of our yard. Yet again, they drew me 2-3 different places this could go. I asked about it going towards the back of our property. They said they could potentially do that. Well, my husband then explained to me, I believe it's in a residential sewer service, cleanouts need to be installed at intervals of 100 feet. So if the main line was ran through our property and we wanted it at the back of our lot, so we didn't have an easement cutting straight through the middle of our property where our children play, and we didn't want cleanouts sticking up, this would all be at an additional cost for the project. Also, I would say,
At this time, Ms. Ackerson,
what?
at this time.
Okay.
Can we give her more?
I'd be okay with that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Give 2 more
Thank
minutes.
you. I appreciate that. So I will also tell you, according to our ex-neighbor, Dave Williams, who I think it was living in his property and involved in, the city issues, at one point this project was proposed, and in my understanding from Dave Williams, secondhand knowledge, that it was completely grant funded and then shot down. I understand they're saying that's not a possibility now, but at one point it was, and we were not given that opportunity. The other secondhand knowledge, yet again, correct me if I'm wrong, the leakage wasn't an issue until the development was built behind the properties. So at no point was there ever an issue with the septic until someone decided it was okay to put that development there, and then the leakage became an issue. And now we are the ones that need to absorb this cost. I will also say my husband wrote several notes about saddle taps and the use of them, which they have proposed in this project. And basically those are typically used for smaller branch lines and larger pipes, but not recommended for sewer lines, which is what he was told they were proposing to use. The downside of those being leakage, corrosion, weakening of the main line, clogging, and more. So that's what they're proposing, at least from our understanding, to use for this new project, probably for cost. Overall, I feel like, by the way, the postcard for this meeting was addressed to the residents, as we know, like not our names, not our addresses. Mine was in my neighbor's yard 2 doors down. So had 3 of my neighbors not notified me of this meeting tonight, I wouldn't have even had the opportunity to speak with any of you because I wouldn't have known this meeting was taking place. I was given that card last Wednesday with 7 days-ish notice to get a meeting on the books. I have 3 children. I'm actually going straight from here to all-city band and swim lessons. I had to leave my business early to get here. So I'm just gonna tell you all, like, I'm so disappointed as somebody who really loves this city and this community, not only at the way that this project's been handled, the way we've been spoken to, but the way that it's basically felt to just feel like nothing's really in our hands. We weren't even given an opportunity to meet. I should have an opportunity, a few years at least, to decide if I wanna keep my property or sell my property before I'm given this large amount of cost. And it is a burden. It is a huge burden. The amount of trust, respect, anything that, like, I feel, I've never felt this violated. You buy a home, you grow up, you think you're gonna buy a home, you save for your home in a community that you care about, and you think that that's your property. Your property. I don't feel like this is my property. I don't feel like that at all. So I appreciate your time. I appreciate you hearing us. And I hope that, this could be done better in the future. In other ways. And to hear before the meeting, by the way, I do believe I heard someone in the hall saying that if this project was approved, it would be a shit show and that we would all fight tooth and nail. To hear somebody sitting at this desk speak about us while we're out there waiting to speak to you all was dehumanizing. It was dehumanizing. It was really just sad, honestly, that a member of the organization that represents the city I love and care about just is so flippant about this, and it affects lives, like a lot of lives. So I appreciate you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ackerson. Anyone else for public comment, please? Just name and address, please.
Natalie Morfitt, 4009 South Main Street. I do not wish to speak. Honestly, I am standing before you to speak about the belittlement that I have felt throughout this entire project. I do not have words for how I've been treated and spoken to as a citizen in this city. So I prepared a letter for you today about how this has gone for me personally. I am a single mom of 3 children in this city, and this cost is being put on me. And this is how I am treated.
Thank you, Ms. Morfitt. Anyone else for public comment tonight? All right, seeing none, we'll bring it back to council.
Mr. Mayor, over here.
Yep, go ahead.
I'll start by saying I apologize for how you feel you've been treated, and I'm sorry about that. So we'll proceed and try to work through this. So,
Thank you, Counselor. Let me find my list here.
Mr. Mayor, can I speak while you're looking?
Yep, go ahead.
I guess it'd be Mr. Schrage or whoever would do the calculations. It's been mentioned that we could do this on a citywide basis with funding from the city overall out of some sewer fund or what have you. And it's been said we have other areas of the community in the city limits that would have a precedent. Whether that's true or not, I think every area that has a septic in the city limits will have the same emotional impact that these people have had. Can we get an assessment or a calculation if we were to do, I don't know, $1 a household per year and raise the money to fund this, or how many years could we do that? To get a comparison of putting a burden on individuals versus spreading it through the whole city for the public good, because we're implying that septics are terrible for the public good, even though I think on our farm we had a septic for 50 plus years and it's still running fine. I helped put it in as a little kid, like 10 years old. And believe it or not, it's still running even though I helped at 10. So they can last for a long, long, long time. So how quickly could we assess the cost to cover potentially all the septics in the city limits? I mean, that would be the maximum dollar amount. You know, you spread a big cost over lots of people, 50 cents a month, $1 a month. I think that's not a terrible number. If it's $10 a month, that's different. So if it'd be Mr. Gaines, or who do we ask to figure out a cost?
So maybe Ron can jump in after, but I guess what I can tell you is that I would say this is one of the shorter areas of town, shorter meaning infrastructure relatively nearby. There's areas of town where there's not sewer infrastructure for more than a half a mile, where the sewer would have to be extended to reach those areas. And I believe, was it around 400, Tyler? Septics left in the city, or unserved properties that we have? There are hundreds, yeah.
So if the property's half a mile away, it's, you know, the 200-foot mark comes into play. So the city has some infrastructure that we would own and maintain ourselves, that it's not going to be burdened on the citizen. I mean, at what point, how far away from your house does the citizen take care of? You know, that's what I'm wondering about.
How far does this, is the city, is the
How far is the
citizen
citizen responsible? In this case, we're installing new, but, you know, in my property, the sewer line's either on my side of the street or the other side of the street. I mean,
Yeah, generally the sewer's in the middle of the roadway, and the
Okay.
property owner's responsible to the sewer main. So all the way from your home to the middle of the street.
so I'd
generally
have to do a
speaking.
curb cut, which I can actually attest to doing these on some of my properties. So I kind of answered my own question, but for the benefit of the people listening, you have to cut into the street and so on. It's not easy, not cheap. How do we find out what it would cost to have a reasonable pool of money developed and grow as a sinking fund, if that's the right word? Maybe Jennifer could come up with a thought, or Ron. I'd like to know from that standpoint for the public good. And I still would like to find out about the grants that were mentioned that were apparently disavowed or didn't happen. I mean, it was mentioned, so maybe before your time.
It could have been, but to my knowledge, there's been no grant for this area. Even on the previous submittals, I don't
Commissioner Gaines, can you speak to that at all? Was there any previous?
I don't recall a grant, and I know Michelle Sweeney was here at the same time. She did the design, so.
Don't recall either.
Okay. Mind if I jump through my list?
Yeah, go ahead.
Circle back. One, do you know which zone Ms. Ackerson's in?
2.
Just for our decision tonight?
2.
Two? Okay.
The blue ones, right?
Okay. Then I did want to speak to not knowing some of the early costs. So early on, we did not clearly convey that there was the additional cost, and that was a discussion for us at council, and that's why we kind of put a pause, was to say, okay, now that we've heard some of these concerns and realized there is that connection cost, let's kind of sit down, look at those numbers. Again, staff did a great job trying to figure out how we could pay for that and what those impacts would be. We didn't know, I think even to this point, we'd have to get into the actual, like each house, get it quoted to know the actual numbers. But it is correct, we did not early on communicate. A lot, I know that was discussion up here of wanting to make sure we knew the full impact on residents before we move forward with it. Covered that. The damage, can you just speak to, I know I've heard it from a couple times, the damage caused by James Drive. Is that a prompting factor in this with some of those households? I know there's one that needs likely to have the city because their site can no longer even have the septic on site with how the developments happen behind there.
I've heard about it third hand as well. I don't know how their septic functioned previously, if they just had a tank and no leach field and it discharged under the bike trail into the creek directly, and if that construction, whether it severed the line or moved the line, I don't know that. Are there some older septics that have no leach field and it's discharged directly? Yes.
Yep. Okay. I can't speak for the post office. I can at least apologize that your letter did not end up in your mailbox. I know that was a discussion. I did want to speak, though, to staff's credit here. Do we put the resident on it? Do we put the names? I know that's something we've gone back and forth on, and typically, just because it's an automated list, that's why it says the resident. But I do think that's something that, working with this group up here, we tried as much as possible. It's really our job to try and help personalize some of that and reach out and make sure we're communicating with residents, and I know a lot of us try to make as much time as possible to do that. But so I apologize if that comes off as impersonal. I think we do just pull from the county site, and then it's an automated listing thing that sends out the addresses, but I do definitely hear that concern, because a lot of the things that city does, unfortunately, can come off as very impersonal since we're trying to address the whole city with it. So definitely hear that concern. Any other questions, discussion, thoughts from council?
Mr. Mayor, I just have a quick one for Mr. Schragi. If a resident were to tap in during construction, that would be a T connection, not a saddle connection, correct?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with where the saddle tap comments. Usually that's a retrofit, like if there's already existing sewer under a roadway, so they don't have to dig it up. Usually they can do a saddle tap, but on new construction, there would be a T, a service stub with a cap on it.
Okay.
Yep.
And then last thing I did have on my list was just speaking to, I can't answer for the question, but the feeling like this is forced on, that's definitely a hard part with things like this, is that's essentially what we're needing to make a policy decision on, is does the public benefit of putting this in place outweigh some of the burden that it puts on some of the residents? And I can't really, that's the decisions we have to make, but we definitely hear that and take it into account. And I think as much as possible too, this last year, that's why we've taken so long getting this back to everybody, was at least trying to make sure we're accommodating for that as much as we can, trying to balance the overall tax impact on the sewer rates versus what we can try to minimize from the resident impact piece of it.
Mr. Mayor.
Yep, go ahead.
Director Schragi, could you, I know it was touched on here, but remind me what happens, like the DNR factor and them saying this needs to be addressed. So what is it because they test the water, or what prompts that? They just know where our septics are and that's why or maybe Tyler can answer better than.
Yeah, I would have to lean on Tyler for that.
Okay. Because I'm wondering, if something's not done, like, obviously, there's a reason they're reaching out to us, and I assume at some point maybe money, Tyler, can you answer that?
So we don't have a requirement that we have to go and connect all septics in the city sewer, but the DNR does note in our inspections, which are every 2 years, that we review areas of town that are sewerable, that aren't currently connected to the city sewer, and then come up with some sort of plan for connecting those or giving those homeowners an option.
And do you know why that's, I mean, I'm thinking I know why that's important to them, but do you know the exact, can you tell me the exact reason why that's important to the DNR? Is it just simply water quality?
I can't say
Okay.
for sure why they
Okay.
want.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Counselor.
Mr. Mayor.
Yep, go ahead.
I just did a quick calculation. I don't know how accurate this is going to be, but I use his phone, so that's. I believe there's roughly 15,000 households in Cedar Falls, give or take, we'll say.
I think it's higher than that.
And if we did $1 a month, 12 months, we get $180,000 of revenue for this special fund to finance some of these costs. And we do it for 20 years, which we're talking about our alternatives here post 20 year. We have $3,600,000 just taking $1 a month. I don't know how much, and if we did 50 cents a month, we'd have 1,000,008. That would cover a lot of septic hookups, 50 cents a month per resident. Do we need a referendum, or what do we need to potentially pursue that? I mean, that seems like a soft touch to everybody for the economic good of the city and the citizens, if they're concerned about septic.
If I can put it in like motion words, well, discussion for this group. So one direction we could ask would be, or take away from this, if we wanted more information or for staff to put something together and we feel like tonight we're not ready to make a decision until we have that information, we can give a specific ask if we've got some additional thoughts, if we wanted to give direction, to have staff come back and with the scenario, if we want to cover the 100% costs, what that total burden is and how that would be done. That's direction we can give, but that's kind of up to this body to.
So, Mr. Mayor, do you want me to make a motion that staff calculates a fee per household of 50 cents?
Daryl?
$1?
Don't want to interrupt you, but how is this process, I'd rather ask a question first on the reality of this process actually working, and maybe Tyler would have to answer this, or Director Schrage. Is there another thing that we're doing that's got a special fund, and how has that worked out? Or how would this, in the theory of this,
Not
work
that
in
I know
reality?
related to the sewer fund specifically, but I do know that we'll be discussing it more in depth as our larger project comes forward. So we'll be discussing different mechanisms within the fee. But setting up a separate fee, project specific, I don't know of another example unless Ms. Rodenbecker.
We have a stormwater fee of some sort.
Yeah, we have an enterprise fund for stormwater, correct.
So could this
But
be
not
part,
within sanitary.
could this be part of like a group of projects, including the septic hookup? And I know we got a major project coming up with the construction, but is there other things that we could throw into this if this would become a reality?
I think that maybe Mr. Gaines can answer that better than I can.
I'm not sure. It would already be part of the sanitary sewer utility. That's where the funding would come from, more than likely, depending on what the council's directive to do, because Mr. Cruz has been a little bit broad. Just are we trying to cover the cost of this, or
So I guess if
trying
I
to
can
figure?
kind of put it back to what you were thinking, if give direction and keep us moving would be, I don't think you need to get that specific on it, but it might be
Well-
direction to say, have staff move ahead with, it sounds like you're proposing covering the full cost
Well,
through,
The imposition of a tax,
Yeah.
basically. You want to
Yeah.
increase taxes on each household.
or utility fee, tax, cost. I'd like to make a motion to consider calculating $1 per household per year to see what kind of revenue we generate from that. If we want to do 50 cents, a quarter, we could then make a better decision. But we'd start with $1 per household to spread the cost, because we're putting a burden of $23,000 an acre on Area 1. This is considered a public good, a public need by some, to say that the city needs septics removed. That's kind of how your enterprise funds work. Your city services are to cover the public good that an individual citizen can't afford to pay. Police, fire, garbage pickup, street construction. Sanitary sewer would be one of those that would fit in that category.
So if I could reword it, it's a motion to have staff look at ways to fund, what it would look like to fund this through.
An assessment, or whatever the tax fee.
Darrell, are you talking about potentially the 400 or around there, 400 septic systems that are still in the city? Or are you talking about just this area?
Just see what $1 per household per month would raise for revenue. And then over a number of years, 10 years, 20 years, I got $3.6 million with, what did I say, $1 on 15,000 households.
So this would be a project to lead to the end of all septic systems. Is that, I guess, what I'm asking you?
Mr. Mayor, if I may, just a point of order. I just want to double check. It sounds like we're discussing imposing a tax upon all citizens here, and that's not at all the agenda item. So I do appreciate the creative thought around it, but I don't think we're going to get anywhere, and even if we did get somewhere, it probably wouldn't be legal. So I think we should probably deter from that line of thought.
I'm
and
trying to
come
get a
back
solution for.
I get that, but that's not in our toolbox. Taxing tonight isn't what we're discussing at this meeting. So for now, we need to talk about whether or not we're going to move forward with any of these phases or not.
Okay, then earlier my question was, how do we determine which phase we might want to vote to go forward, or because we don't have all the citizens here to hear their stories.
Well, we're never going to have everybody here. We
Well, I understand.
Out the letters and made sure to make the meetings possible, and that is part of this process, to make sure people can provide their input. I would say we can make a decision on that. Do you want to move forward direction? And I'll, real quick before I get there, ask this question. Administrator Gaines, if we did move forward with it, but the group was willing to discuss how to pay for it and gave the direction to move forward, but look at other ways to fund it and work the numbers to see if there's other ways to fund it to lower the burden, is that something we could do, or do we need to figure that out before we say move forward?
So I think the first thing is the deciding if you want to move forward, and then the second thing is the incentive piece that we have before you tonight. That would come back to the city council in a form of a resolution to approve that at some point. So if we would like some direction if there's something else. What I'm hearing Mr. Cruz say is maybe it's not necessarily a tax, but an additional dollar that would be on the sanitary sewer fee structure. I don't know if that's what you were referring to.
I know Mr. Rogers was shaking his head there that it's ruined legal problems here, but
The tax idea is unlawful, but
Okay.
this would come out of the sanitary sewer.
a fee. I mean, we pay so much a month for sanitary sewer for the volume of water per household, or per gallon of water usage. So that's not a tax, it's a usage fee, which now you said earlier something about that per acre.
On real estate, this is different. This is a utility.
Okay. So help me out then. I'm trying to get a handle on the number of households in Cedar Falls, which I'm assuming is around 15,000. Some people think it's more than that. I just use that as a number because I remember a few years back, and I don't know how many, I heard a number of 14,000 something. So I'm assuming we added a few hundred per year and so on. So 15,000, 16,000 times $1 times 12 months times 20 years is 3,600,000. That hooks up a lot of septic tanks, or a portion of them, and it's not forcing anybody to do it. It's a solution to the concerns that citizens have on these high hookup fees.
If I can jump in. So my only feedback would be is, I think we're not going to figure out the fee structure tonight.
No,
So I would just say from tonight, it's direction on moving forward or not, with also that direction on, do we want staff to look at additional ways to fund it beyond just the current proposed fee structure that's in here.
Right.
And that can be along with that. I don't think we need to get into specifics, but we can give that direction on, do we want to look at other ways to?
It would be shameful not to look at that option. It wouldn't be that big of a calculation. Somebody knows how many households in town. Somebody sitting in the audience might know.
We can look at that.
It wouldn't take too much, times $1, times 12.
We're not going to do it tonight, though.
Mr. Mayor, point of order, is there a motion on the floor?
So there's not currently a motion. So we do have the option to move forward with the whole thing or individually. If the group's okay with it, I'd say we look at voting on the whole thing, knowing that if we do not move forward with the whole item, we can then review each of the 3 individual areas separately.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, I mean, since we're still kind of in this deliberation process, I'm considering if I were able to read both public comments that we received that weren't able to be read or said tonight from a resident there. And then we could talk about what motion we want to go forward with. Does that make sense? Yeah. I looked it up. It's about 2.5 minutes read, so it's within that public comment section on each of them. The first one, dear council members, I'm writing in strong support of the South Main Street Sewer Project. Since moving into 4209 South Main almost 10 years ago, we've experienced septic failure in our backyard after a new septic was installed at purchase time. We've contacted the City of Cedar Falls and Blackhawk County Health Department. We've been advised that our current parcel is unable to sustain a working septic system because of the oversaturation of our soil. The problem became acute when the sands development was implemented. We believe the current proposal by the city that pays for easement land, the hookup from our house to the city sewer, and the amortization of payment over 10 years is a fair proposal. We urge you to pass this proposal as we really have no other option that will keep our backyard from becoming a sewer swamp. Thank you for your consideration. Walt and Jenny Rogers, 4209 South Main. Additional that was referred to earlier. Hi, Council and the City of Cedar Falls. I'm going to address you tonight via letter due to this meeting being held during my 11-year-old's first band concert, and I may have to leave early. He's playing the trumpet tonight at the All-City Band Festival and is thrilled that he has tackled this accomplishment. Trumpet did not come easily for him. I'm going to outline the mismanagement of the project front to back and address some very large concerns I have about how the City of Cedar Falls staff treat the community they are hired to serve. I've been belittled and dehumanized for asking questions and requesting that updated and full information be supplied to the homeowners included in this project. It has been so mismanaged that it appears now to be a tactic to push this project through with the hope that I just give up and incur thousands of dollars in costs that have a huge financial impact on my family. I stood before you last time the council was voting on the city sewer project less than 2 weeks out from major abdominal surgery because I felt it important that my voice be heard. I felt that it was important that the council see my face and understand the fiscal impact that this project would have on its homeowners. To our neighborhood's dismay, David was allowed to present the plan to the council and leave out the bulk of the cost expectations for each resident. My cost that was presented was between $7,900 and $11,000. What was not included in this presentation or anywhere in the information for the meeting was the hidden cost. These costs were also hidden from most residents, and I only found out about them by asking questions and pushing to understand the project as a whole. Costs hidden from the council and residents. The cost to run the new sewer line to my house. This cannot be spread as I must contract this work myself. The estimates that I received for this were $125 to $150 per foot, times at least 50 foot, $7,500. My line would likely be longer due to the placement costing upward of $20,000 to $24,000. Decommissioning my septic, which when referenced in our meeting, Chase advised me that the cost isn't that high. The national average for this cost is $5,500, but it can be up to $10,000. The flippant attitude about spending $5,500 on my dollars was not appreciated. Monthly sewer maintenance and cost are added to my monthly utility bill. The approved plan leaves me with the cost of $20,900 to personally pay for city infrastructure. Residents stood in front of you before the first vote, pleading for a stop to this due to being on a fixed income. Imagine the horror those residents would have to understand the full cost and weight of this project. I met with Chase, Danny, Ron, and Chris last week to discuss the new options being presented today, in which the meeting was utterly calamitous. In this meeting, I was presented with an old map showing the sewer going through my well, which I've corrected numerous times and was emailed a corrected version last year, and zero understanding of the Blackhawk County deed transfer regulations. All questions and inquiries were met with flippant attitudes by Chase and Ron. I stated in that meeting that this is not my area of expertise and that it shouldn't have to be. The new options that are being presented cannot be trusted due to the previous issues and continued misinformation. During our meeting, Ron Gaines made it very clear that he does not care to listen to my concerns about communication and the inadequacies of his staff's attention to detail. He in fact stated that I have other more important shit to do than rehash these issues here, referring to the miss on deed transfer knowledge and the old map being presented yet again. Listening to my feedback during our scheduled meeting time was below him, and he made that very clear not only with his words but with his aggressive tone. His absolute lack of humility or care for the citizens in this city is a poison that trickles down to his employees like Chase, where there appears there is no accountability or remorse for their actions, and members of this council who witnessed their actions described them as indefensible. In Ron's apology email, he stated, "As staff, we sometimes get caught up in the details and forget to take a step back and see things through the eyes of the people it affects, the residents." That is exactly what he and his team have done throughout this entire project. They chose to misinform the council about the costs to the residents the first time this went to vote and continue to miss elementary details to push this project through, all while forgetting the people that they serve. The current and past projects being run by this team should be audited to look at what else they're forgetting at the expense of the citizens. It should be noted that Ron's apology was for this statement and his statement only, not the continued behavior and weaponized incompetence of his staff. Not only am I asking for you to vote this down or the city pay the full cost, but I'm asking for you to be accountable for the mismanagement of this project. How many citizens have Ron, Chase, and David been allowed to disrespect and belittle without accountability or consequences? The citizens of Cedar Falls should be mortified that these are the staff members in place to serve us as a community. Not only am I owed a public apology, but the residents of Cedar Falls deserve better leadership. Natalie Morford, 4009 South Main Street, lifetime resident of Cedar Falls. Those are the two public comments that we had received that were not aired tonight.
Thank you, Counselor.
Mr. Mayor,
Yep.
I'm a little bit confused on why we wouldn't want to decide or determine how much money could come from $1 a month, because that could become option 4 or scenario 4 to dramatically change the outcome. It's a simple calculation, and
So, Mr. Mayor, point of order on that. I don't think tonight, I think it's an idea worth investigating, Darrell, but I certainly am not going to entertain raising someone's sewer rate across the board here tonight. That's not what this was about, and I'm not prepared to speak for my 4,000 residents and say, I'm sure you were okay with me increasing your fee by $1. I like your idea or your creativity, but it's out of scope for tonight.
what I want to determine is the dollar amount that we could generate. That then gives another piece
Well,
of the
I think you've
puzzle.
already made your point on that. You've already done the math, and I
Okay.
don't disagree with your
Okay.
math.
Well,
I disagree with, that's not our scope tonight.
Because again, I would take that as the direction of staff would be to look at the other ways we can pay for this, which would include looking at those numbers, figuring out how to do it, how much could be collected. Again, we're just not going to run those numbers tonight in this meeting. So we can give that direction to have staff kind of come back through this process with that information.
I mean, nobody challenged me on the 15,000, 3.6, 3 million.
More households than that.
More than 15? That'd be more revenue or less per household.
But, so I do think for this, though, we've got again, it's somebody will have to make the motion, but I would say if the group wants to move ahead with looking at the whole project first, knowing if we do vote that down, that would be reviewing each of the projects separately. And after we make that motion, we can look at any of those things we'd like to give direction to staff on with it.
Mr. Mayor, it will come back before us then with the solidification of those scenarios, as I understand it, the different incentives that we have out there.
Yeah, if any of the areas move forward, there would be a policy document regarding the 3 scenarios. That would be the first thing that come back before you, yep.
Right. So tonight, you're just looking for direction on, do we want to move forward on 1, 2, 3, or all, correct?
Or none of them.
Right, or none of them, correct, right.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to ask one more clarifying question from Director Schrage. Just in theory, if we put in all these lines, do the residents have a responsibility to hook up right now? Or could they have their septic systems, maintain them, and maybe 60 years later, as long as they were ones that Cruz put in, they last that long, and never have to hook up?
Correct.
Okay. With that, though, would they have cleanouts in their yards where the easements are, or would that come after the tapping?
It would all depend on how far they are from the home to the connection where the sewer main is. We would have to follow the plumbing code for the distance for appropriate cleanout, if any. Some of them may be close enough to where there would be no cleanouts from the home to the main.
Okay.
quick clarification, is there a maximum number of years to where they have to connect? Because he said 60 years, but is there a, by like year 20, they have to connect? Is there a?
No, it's just under scenario 3, there would be no additional incentives. There'd be no up to $5,000 reimbursement, no spreading the tapping fee over the 10 years. If theoretically someone owned their property for 60 years and they had no trouble and it was never inspected by the county, that could be a scenario.
Yep. Okay. You have a really quick question?
Important to note, at least we were told once before, this is why I brought up selling our home, that if we now sell our home and this passes, we are required to make some sort of acknowledgement to anybody who purchases our home that they would potentially be responsible for this. Not, and they wouldn't know until you guys decide, or the city decides. It wouldn't be their choice or not. So one, I'd like to point that out as somebody who just bought my home 30 years ago. Would also like to ask if my property specifically would be within 200 feet of the line, because I'm still not clear on that. And 3, would also just like to point out that while we talk about setting a precedent, I do think it's really important to note that as somebody who never thought that this would be something that happened, and I do truly care about public health, trust me, nurse practitioner, but it is important to note, and I do feel like citizens need to know, if this is how the city handles things and decides, tens of thousands of dollars of citizens' money can just be discretionarily spent without their consent. I think it's important that citizens know that's a thing that can happen in this city before they purchase homes here. Because I didn't, and I can guarantee my husband didn't. I don't think any of our neighbors did. I chose to not build a new home for some of these reasons. So.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Ackerson. That last one I will speak to, just my understanding, Attorney Rogers, whoever can correct me, that is any city, if there's something like this that they need to make a decision on a certain district, that's part of the city. They do sometimes have to make decisions on what policy, do they force people to do, connect to this, put this infrastructure in. It's definitely not just Cedar Falls. But that's why I think we try to put so much work into having these conversations, because I think at the end of the day, we do have to make a decision, and it does force residents to have to go along with it. So that is a piece of what being the city is. And again, just reiterate, it's not just Cedar Falls, but definitely do weigh on the impact of that on residents. Chase, can you just speak to the acknowledgement? What would somebody like Ms. Ackerson, if they have to sell their home, any sort of comment they have to put in the sale with it for that?
Other than the easements that would be on the property would be part of their title.
And if there's a tapping fee ordinance passed, that would be on the books as well to come up.
Okay. And then if they have already switched the septic, probably some notification that their utility bill will be a little higher because they've got that additional cost built in there. Okay.
And then a question about whether the connection would be required or not. Basically, if Area 2, being that Ms. Ackerson lives in Area 2, if Area 2 does not move forward, there'd be no requirement for connection.
Okay. So it wouldn't be within 200 feet to where it has to. Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I was going to wait till we had a motion to really make any comment, but since we're still waiting to find a motion, I'll make my comments now. Really, the only positive comments from residents that I've heard on this project really exist out of Zone 1. There's been some kind of ambivalent comments that you and I have both heard in the last few days, but by and large, really the positivity I've heard for this project, and probably where I would see the biggest environmental impact or need right now, exists within Zone 1. I will also say that when we voted on this back in July, I've shared this. I have similar concerns that I don't feel as though the cost was very well portrayed to us as a voting body, and we passed that 7-0. So for me, on my end, I'm frustrated by that. I appreciate the effort that staff has undertaken, and I will readily admit that I have been a squeaky wheel on this project, asking you to find ways to reduce the cost to the citizen. And I actually appreciate Daryl's comments here that he'd like to see that reduced further. I don't know what that looks like, but it's definitely worth considering. But I will just say I fully intend on not voting Zone 2 and 3 through, based on the feedback I've had from the residents there I understand that, yep, we have an island here, but we are forcing a pretty substantial financial burden on someone, even if we are giving them the opportunity to have that reduced, even if we are giving them the opportunity to have that spread out at 3%, it's still something that these folks didn't ask for. I would feel decidedly differently about this if we had even a majority of residents on this street that have said, yes, this is a project I want. We don't have that. I appreciate staff's efforts with this. I know it's been a giant undertaking, but I'm concerned, even as we sit here now and say, hey, if we pass this through, we're going to have staff come back with a potential way to reduce this further. We are still leaving the citizens on this street vastly confused as to what they're on the hook for. It's a damned if you do and damned if you don't with this. I don't see a way, based on the feedback we've had, that I can vote 2 and 3 through. Thanks.
Mr. Mayor, can I make a motion to, I'm just going to start out with the first one, which is to go ahead and proceed as the whole project. I'd like to make that motion.
Second.
Motion seconded and open for discussion.
Mr. Mayor, how do we determine then if we want to, as Councilor Latta alluded to, just vote for one? We have to turn down this first motion?
Correct.
Yep, so with this first one will be with the understanding that if the group votes that down,
Okay.
we'll come back and look at the 3 individual.
So the difficulty in my mind to do that is I would want to pursue in any of these the $1,000 per house, or excuse me, $1 a household. We did a quick Google search and it was like 15,000 and change households. So I'm pretty close on the 15,000. To Gil's point, imposing on his residents $1 a thousand, we're not doing that. I'm looking for a painless solution that's very painful to individuals, a solution to the pain that the individuals have. So I don't think it's a tax. You know, Aaron, you look baffled, so I'm.
Well, $1's a dollar.
We're going to talk about the budget tonight, okay?
Yeah,
And I'm sure we'll have a discussion about a couple of cents on the millage rate and things like that. And when you're saying every household in the city has to pay 50 cents, a dollar, whatever it is, we can call it a user fee. It's ultimately an increase in cost to those households, right? That's the concern. And so, yeah, I'll call it a tax. I know that's not the legal definition, but that's ultimately what it amounts to, is increasing the monthly costs for every household in Cedar Falls.
But it gives a public benefit that people are inferring that septics leak and then pollute and so on and so on and so on, which isn't necessarily true, but that's a concern of people.
Well, it is, because that's why we're talking about this. But, Mr. Mayor, we're in the motion, right? So to keep moving and hopefully get the second part of this committee of the whole meeting that we didn't get last time, could we?
So there's a motion second on the floor.
Yep.
If there's any additional conversation from council.
Yeah, I will say, Your Honor, or Mr. Mayor, if it's okay, is that, Your Honor? I thought I was in the courtroom, wrong room. Yeah.
No, you can,
Yeah, Your Honor.
you can use that phrase more often.
Your Excellency.
Yeah, I forgot where I was. You know, again, I start from the premise that there is no force tapping. I understand what you're saying, and we're not requiring a cost up front. Ultimately, the septic can succeed for a long time, and then when it comes to sell the house, that would be a consideration with whatever notices are there. That would be a consideration, frankly, if we didn't have that requirement, if somebody was buying it and was septic and they wanted to have sewer hooked up and it wasn't available. So that could be a long-term impact. I think overall, all 3 of the zones serve the overriding policy reason for this movement towards getting rid of septic in these particular sort of inner parts of town, and especially with Dry Run Creek right down there, knowing full well that it'll come back before the council with the specifics on the incentives. I mean, a lot of projects go forward and they don't have a tiered incentive system at all. And so I think it's evidence of the willingness. I understand the communication might not have been the best, but the willingness of the city to do its darndest to provide 3 different options that hopefully would fit the needs of everybody within those zones. So I'm in favor of moving forward with all of the zones, and it'll come back before us with the specifics. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Counselor. Any other discussion on this item for moving forward with the whole project? Seeing none, since we are voting, I'll just open up for any additional public comment. All right, seeing none, all those in favor of moving ahead with the full project as motioned?
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
So that motion does not carry. So we'll circle back to look at, we'll just go 1 through 3. So look for a motion to move ahead with just section 1 of the project. If somebody would like to make
Mr.
that.
Mayor, I make a motion that we move ahead with area number 1.
Second.
And then any discussion on that item? And if you want to pull the map, yeah, so we know. Put that on the screen, Denny. There we go. So any other discussion on area 1? All right, and any discussion from the public? All right, seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, that motion does carry. Item or section number 2, area 2. Do we have a motion to move ahead with area 2?
So move.
Second.
Motion and seconded. Any discussion from council? All right, seeing none, any from the public? Also seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
That motion does not carry. And then area number 3, is there a motion to approve moving ahead with area number 3?
So move.
Second.
Motion seconded. And any discussion from council? Seeing none, any from the public? Also seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
And all opposed?
Nay.
That motion does not carry. All right, thank you, everyone, for discussion on those. So just so everyone watching, area 1 of that will be moving ahead. We will not be moving ahead with areas 2 and 3 of this project. For tonight's discussion, I know, Director Shagi, we've got the refuse rates. What are your thoughts on wanting to jump into that? No, we were pretty...
Are you asking council or?
Sorry, I'm asking
Okay.
staff first and see if we feel we've got enough. Everyone want to go ahead with it, and we feel we need more information, we can...
Yeah, I say we move forward.
Move forward.
Yep.
Okay. All right, thank you, everyone. So we'll now move to item number 2 of the agenda, refuse study presentation, and we've got Brian Heath.
All right, thank you, Mayor. I'll give you the abbreviated version here and try to keep moving fairly quick. I know this is a kind of a timely manner. We want to get an ordinance done by the new fiscal year, so I'll get right to it. I'm going to do a quick overview here. We'll talk a little bit about the Blackhawk County landfill. We'll talk a little bit about the transfer station service and rates, yard waste as well. We'll get into some recycling rates and methods. And with that, we have a little scenario on what it would look like for a curbside collection scenario. Get into container dumpsters, our 3-yard containers, automated refuse collection, which is the core of our operation, the residential solid waste collections. We'll do a summary of the increases, and then at that point, I'll turn it over to Controller Treasurer Roding, and she'll talk a little bit about the history of the fund. A little bit about the Blackhawk County landfill. It is joint owned by the cities and the county. The commission consists of 5 members. There's 2 from Waterloo, 1 from Cedar Falls, 1 from Blackhawk County, and 1 from small communities. Our staff at the landfill consists of 1 administrator and a newly hired education coordinator. The landfill is a contracted operation. It's a public-private contracted operation at this point. We take in about 215,000 tons per year. At the current rate, we have 25 years of permitted space available. Of the land that we own, we have about 75 years that can be developed. One of the most recent projects and a significant project is a landfill gas collection. So we have a renewable natural gas project that's completed and will be injected back into the natural gas pipeline. The rate history of the Blackhawk County landfill from 2008 to 2014 was 33.25. Then there was a 3-year period where it was $2 per year increase. And then in 2019, we went to 40.25, which was a 4.4 increase. And then July of 23, we landed at $43 a ton, which is another 1.77 increase. The rate history of the transfer station for solid waste. In 2020, we had a separate fee for our household materials as well as our demolition materials at $57.50 for household and $59.15 for demolition. That seemed a little bit confusing for both staff and our customers. So during our last rate study, which by the way is done every 5 years, I wanted to point that out at the beginning, we decided to combine the two and come up with a rate of $65 per ton. It eliminated a lot of confusion for everybody that uses the transfer station. The rate history of the transfer station for drop-off solid waste, anything less than 260 pounds prior to 2008 had a $5.50 minimum charge. That was increased after July of 2008 to $7. This is our first proposed increase for this new budget year coming up. Anything less than 215 pounds, and basically all that does is puts us at a prorated rate for the amount. 215 pounds at our current tonnage rate equals $7. So that's what we want to do, is we want to just get that balanced out a little bit. The other increase here we're looking at is to basically increase solid waste bag drop-off, that's single bags, from 75 cents up to $1. UNI is a customer of ours as well for several years. They had a rate of $42.25. We basically set that up through an agreement with UNI that they would pay $9 over the landfill rate when they come to use our facility. That was increased to $52 per ton as of 2023, and they also pay for appliances and TVs, CRTs. We do get some computers from them, but not very many appliances. Our proposed increase for UNI is to bring them right up to the amount everybody else pays, $65 per ton. We feel that's fair, and they were notified of this back in October that this proposal was going to be presented. So basically what that does is it creates $8,000 additional revenue. It's a 25% increase for UNI. For yard waste, FY 2024, we had 7,450 accounts. We collected 29,000 tons of yard waste. 29,000 yard waste carts, 1,300 tons of yard waste was diverted. We take that to the compost site now. We've been doing that since about 2016. That saves us not only the tipping fee at the Blackhawk County landfill of approximately $60,000, but it also saves us man hours, fuel, all of our transportation costs. We do our automated route collection on Mondays. July through September is every other Monday. And then we also provide a leaf vacuum service by appointment during the months of October, November, and then if the weather cooperates, we'll go into December with that. That's a $50 fee, and it's been very popular with our residents. The transfer station drop-off for yard waste, a container of miscellaneous yard waste, bag, whatever, 75 cents is what it's been. Anything less than 400 pounds was $7 minimum fee, and our rate is $29.50 per ton. Everything at the compost site that's dropped off is free of charge, of course. We do a 95-gallon cart with our automated collection. We charge per dump rather than a monthly fee. We're able to do that with our RFID system. We're able to read that card as it's emptied, which allows the resident just to pay per dump rather than a monthly fee on that. That increased to $7 July of 2008, and then up to $10 July of 2013. In 2014, we started the half price rate of $5 per dump during the months of April, October, November. They're our heaviest months of collection. At this time, we're not looking at any increase for the automated collection. The transfer station drop-off, what we're looking at doing there is simply the same thing we did with solid waste for that minimum charge per bag from 75 cents to $1. No other increases for the transfer station are being proposed at this time. Rate history for the Blackhawk County solid waste for yard waste from 2000 to 2015 was $25 per ton, and then it followed kind of what the solid waste did, $2 per year for 3 years, and then we've landed on $45 per ton out there. One of the reasons that we left going out to the landfill was because of the contamination rate that's noted in there. That was $50 per ton plus the tonnage fee. So if there was any sort of contamination in the load, they charged us for the entire load, which got fairly costly on occasion when there was items in there. The compost facility is open daily, weather permitting throughout the year. Anything snowfall accumulation of greater than 3 inches, we will close it down temporarily until things get cleaned up or the snow melts, and then we'll open back up. But this last winter, as mild as it was, we were able to pretty much stay open all year. I think we were closed maybe 3 or 4 days. The site is managed by a private contractor. That eliminates the need for the city to purchase large equipment, which is required for composting, windrowing, screening, that type of thing. It is under contract, I believe, for 1 year now. I think last fall we went under contract with them for $200,000 per year. All of the materials that are processed out there are free of charge to residents. We use them on city park projects. We use a lot of the compost to add nutrients to soils throughout the park systems and on city property. On to recycling here, and for our purposes this evening, tin, glass, plastic, we're talking about household recycling, our fibers and styrofoam. Fortunately, we were able to densify styrofoam. We saw the need to do that when we were taking in so much cardboard and all the styrofoam that's coming in with it. And we come up with a solution. Now we're densifying. We're the only city in the state that has the capability to process styrofoam into a reusable product, or into a recyclable product, I should say. Our current collection methods for recycling in the city, there is a single stream operation. It's a private enterprise run by a local businessman. He's charging $20 per month for the collection of recyclables. He uses the same broker that we do, it's Republic Services. We operate the city drop-off sites, and then we process all our materials at the main facility. Looking back in hindsight, that was a very wise choice the council made to do it that way. Years ago, as the markets fluctuate, the contamination issues, some of the rules that China imposed on recycling, none of the material from the Midwest even goes to China anymore. It's all processed and reused throughout the Midwest. So that was a huge deal, and for us, we're able to create mill quality bales, and we're able to send them off without a lot of extra energy spent. Our current operation, we got substations, as you know. They're all free for residential use. The material is brought to the main facility for processing. Again, we process the mill quality bales. It's loaded into a broker trailer that's at our dock. We put all the material in there. The different bales will go in there, and then they'll take it out to their facility, sort it out, so it can be shipped off to the various mills that process it. Our destination drop-off sites, we have one at UNI up near the power plant on Panther Parkway, Fairway on Magnolia Drive, Green Hill Village is one of our large ones near the water tower. We have another site at Orchard Church that's very popular, and then some of our smaller ones, Point West Apartments and the Western Home, and then of course our main recycling center that takes in the majority of our material. Some of the tonnages we have there for UNI, we're doing about 178 tons there. Green Hill Village doing about 318 tons. Fairway, that one's doing about 307 tons, and then Orchard Hill, 319 tons. We're doing about 370 tons at our main site. Our operating costs currently for FY24 is taking us 5,238 staff hours, about $231,000 in staff. Our O&M costs are about $25,000. We've done about 1,400 tons of material recycled, and our revenue this year for FY24 was about $28,600. That fluctuates greatly. The year before we were at $40,000, and I believe our highest was nearly $60,000 in the heyday of recycling. Commercial bulk recycling, prior to 2021, we didn't charge a fee for that. We started getting a lot of influx of cardboard, glass, styrofoam. We assist Waverly with styrofoam and other items. So in January 21, January 1st, 2021, we imposed a $50 per load for the commercial type materials, and that's generated about $2,700 in revenue for FY24. For curbside collection, single stream, this is the scenario for what it would look like if the city was to take on curbside recycling. This is based on about 60% participation or about 7,500 residents. It would be a voluntary program is kind of the basis that we used here. That would require 2 additional trucks, additional staff to operate those trucks, and then the purchase of the recycling carts. The equipment we figured would be about $560,000 for the 2 automated trucks. The carts about $480,000 to cover extras and that type of thing. And then the new hire staff would be about $152,000 with their effective rate. This estimated annual operating cost for that is about $356,000. That includes the rebate savings. So the material gets trucked out loose delivered. And then there's a fee for processing, sorting, and delivery. It has to go to Cedar Rapids to be processed. It's taken to Cedar Rapids and it's baled up and then it's sent off. So it's quite a process, a lot of energy involved with doing that. We figured about 1,000 tons is what we would collect. That's approximately 17 pounds per household per month. I was going to stop there and ask for questions on the curbside scenario, but maybe with the interest of time, we'll wait to the end and try to get through this as quick as we can. Is that okay?
Yeah, let's go for it.
So on to bulk pickup, we implemented that fee of $5 per stop on limited items back in 2013. That got a little bit out of hand, and we ended up taking quite a few items that more than what we could really handle at times, especially during the college move out. So, and also at that time, there was no charge for bulk items at the transfer station. So what we did in January 2021, we increased that fee to $10 for 10 items and $20 for over 10 items. And then we had the additional fee, of course, for our non-landfillable items such as appliance, CRTs, tires, et cetera. Bulk items at the transfer station were then just charged with as regular garbage. Eliminated a lot of confusion up there for staff and for residents and users of the transfer station. Moving on to appliances, our rates for appliances. In FY24, we captured 3,700 appliances, or 166 tons. These go to Weikert Metal for recycling. They're $10 each, up from $7.50 in July of 2008. We pay approximately $7 each for appliances to be recycled, but there's also some work that we do to make sure that they stay upright, that type of thing, because it's important that they're not damaged before they go to the recycler. Tires and rims, this is a big one for us because we've been charging a very minimal fee for tires, used tires, $2.50 for auto tires, and then up to $9 for truck tires on the rims. What we're proposing to do, and this is in line with the contractor that takes our tires, which is Liberty Tire, and they're about the only game in the state that manages that. They're shredded, they're used for landfill leachate media, that type of thing. So we're proposing for passenger and light trucks, $375, commercial truck tires, $12. On down the line, you'll see what the numbers are there. And then up to commercial trucks where it gets a little more pricey, $23 with the rim. Small implement agriculture tires are $65, and then large implements are $100. And then a small fee for miscellaneous motorcycle and small tires. Again, this is in line with what the contractor is currently charging us. For TVs, CRT monitors, cathode ray tubes, we had a fee in 2013 of $5. And then in 2021, that increased to $7.50. The other proposal here is to raise that to $10 per CRT or per computer. And when I talk computer, I'm talking about the entire computer. That would include the monitor, the tower, all of the components of the computer would be included in that $10 fee. Our 3-yard containers, back in 2020 when we had that lower rate of $35, we had a waiting list probably 2 or 3 months out. We did not really want to be in competition with the private sector on this, so we started raising our rates. It was, I think, our last, our go-around with the rate study is when we started raising that, and we raised it for 5 years. And this is what it looks like. January 2020, we started with $53, and now this was the last year of that increase in January 1st of 2025 at $125. We still have quite a few going out. I will tell you that. It's interesting because that puts us a little bit above what the competition is, but the convenience factor is still bringing people to the phones and giving us a call. Cardboard containers, this is where we assist local convenience stores and other businesses with cardboard needs. We charge $10 per pickup. That's up from what we used to charge, $10 per month. Onto the core of our operation, the automated refuse routes. We got about 12,500 collection accounts. That grows by about 100 a year. That's down just a little bit. We were averaging about 135 over the past 5 years, but now it's dropped just a little bit. We're still able to sustain 3 trucks daily. That's Tuesday through Friday. We're able to do that with some creative work with our team. Doyle and staff have come up with some one-sided collection routes. We have several of those, and we're also looking at some route optimization through our software program. We collected about 7,700 tons last year. Our last rate increase for curbside was January 21 and 22. The previous rate increase occurred in July of 2008. So in January 2021, it was a 2.5% increase. That went up to 923, 1743, and 2716 for the large cart. In January of 2022, another 2.5% increase from 946 to the largest cart at 2784. We're proposing a 2% across-the-board increase to the 3 containers plus 3% effective July 2025.
$2. You said 2%. $2.
I'm sorry, $2 across-the-board increase to the 3 containers plus 3% effective July 2025. And then 3% increase for the next 4 years. So what that looks like for the 35-gallon cart, we're talking $11.80 for 2025, and then at the end of it, we're talking $13.28. For the 95-gallon cart, we're going from $30.74 effective in July to up to $34.60 by the time the increase is complete. For the medium cart, what that kind of looks like, the average increase monthly, for the first year, obviously, that's a little bit more, it's $2.60, but then you're looking at a little over 60 cents per year increase for that medium cart, which is our most popular cart, by the way. And then overall, the total increase is about $5.16, $61, almost $62 annually. So a summary of the increases here, beginning July 2025, our proposed rate increases. $2 across the board for the 3 containers plus the 3%, which I just mentioned. Anything less than 250 pounds is $7 minimum charge at the transfer station. We're looking at increasing the bags to $1 for solid waste and yard waste, and then bringing UNI's transfer station rate up to what everybody else pays for that. And then the numbers for the tires, which is in line with our contractor. And then last but not least is increase the TV CRTs to $10 each. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Lisa and let her talk a little bit about the history, and then we can answer some questions.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Lisa.
So I'm going to give some history of the fund. The fund has been self-supporting so far, and the residential user rates are used to help support the other refuse-related services, the recycling center operations, compost site, yard waste collection, leaf bulk pickup, the bulk pickup, and street cleaning, and then flood cleanup. If no increases are approved, the fund is forecasted to be in the red fiscal year 2031, so 6 years from now. We have seen an increase in recycling as those remote sites have been added to the community. And both the recycling and the compost operations have diverted a significant amount of material, as Brian mentioned earlier. The compost material is used on city projects, which does save the city money. And the compost material is also available to the public for their home projects. The community has also had an interest in those smart environmental practices and alternative resource recovery, and city staff is going to continue to market those and push out public relations on those refuse programs that are available. The rate proposals will accomplish better cash flow for certain refuse services. It will also maintain the cash reserves per city council goals. The minimum is the $500,000 or 20 to 30% of annual expenses. This cash reserve will also be used for the fiscal year 2028 CIP project to acquire land for a new transfer station that right now is in the CIP for $1 million. The current facility is in the 500-year floodplain. Tonight, we are seeking a motion for staff to draft a refuse rate ordinance implementing the recommended rate increases that you have seen in tonight's presentation. And now I'll open it up to any questions that you might have for Brian or myself.
All right, thank you guys. I'll open up to council for questions, concerns, feedback. If I can recap, the recommendation we have on the curbside recycling is that we couldn't really do it cost effectively to offer it at any better of a rate than what's available for the private market right now, so that, and we're seeing a lot of use of our existing sites, so probably sticking with how we have it.
Mr. Mayor?
Yep.
I'll kick off. I say this somewhat tongue-in-cheek because Dustin and Tyler are sitting here too, but Brian, my favorite part of our city council field trip that we did was going to the transfer station. It was a really interesting and enlightening experience. You and your team do a great job.
Thank you.
I know that CFU frequently gets a lot of credit, and deservedly so, for a lot of the utility and et cetera costs that we see here, but I can't compliment you and your team enough for the work that you guys have done, and appreciate the presentation. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor.
So I will start off. I wasn't going to make a comment about the tomatoes at the, but I know Hannah was going to jump. I'm sorry, Hannah, I stole your thunder on the tomatoes. But I also would say that the work you've done, Brian, over the years is exemplary. It's just been fantastic. The transfer station tour that we did take, it's very much appreciated that the work you guys do, as I didn't know we were the only city in the state that was doing styrofoam, but to watch that, it's very manual intensive. So applaud you for taking that under as well and keeping everything out of the landfill. I was curious, I hope it's an actual site, but I didn't see the end of East 4th Street listed on the collection sites. Or was that in your presentation?
No, I did miss that one. There's a small container there, and there's also a small container on the west side of the parkade behind Tony's Pizza that we service. Yes,
Yeah.
I failed to mention those.
So kudos to you. You even got more than what you have listed there. So thank you very much.
Yeah, I will mention our method of recycling is very rare for a municipality to manage their recyclables in that manner. Being able to bale the material into mill-quality bales, you don't see that very often. A very typical operation is a single stream collection.
Thank you, Councilor. Thank you, Brian.
Mr. Mayor. Quick one. Thanks, Brian, for the presentation. I have to commend you for leveling out the compost site. Did a phenomenal job out there getting rid of those monster water holes. Thank you on that.
Marked improvement.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. I don't lose my truck. Just a quick question. you got the rate history of the yard waste to the Black Hawk solid waste landfill. Is the material dropped off at the transfer station what gets hauled out to the landfill and not to the compost site? Can we bring it to the compost site, or is there not enough capacity?
We take all of our yard waste that's collected curbside from the residents to the compost site. Everything goes out to the compost site.
Okay.
We started doing that in 2016. So what happens is our trucks come in, we want to get the weights off the trucks. So they come in and the route trucks will dump at the transfer station, and the transfer will take the semi-tractor trailer out to the yard waste facility and dump.
Okay, so then what goes to the landfill?
All solid waste. All solid waste must go to landfill. That's a Tuesday through Saturday.
Okay, but not the yard waste?
No, we're not taking.
Okay, your, unless I'm reading it wrong here, rate history, yard waste, Blackhawk County, solid waste landfill.
Yeah, we used to take our yard waste from residential collections out to the county landfill. We stopped doing that in 2016.
So
And part of the reason I mentioned was, dealing with the contamination rate and the extra cost for transportation.
Okay. So everything goes to the compost site?
Yard waste, yes.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Counselor.
We don't all have to talk around the table. I just want to clarify, the increase on the smallest can size, is that equating to the actual cost for the refuse that's put into the can sizes? I did the percentage comparison quickly, but it looks like that one's jumping a little bit. Is that to, for lack of a better word, right size the cost for that can?
Well, we're a volume-based collection, so the 32 gallon, 64 gallon, and the 95 gallon, the cost is based on the size of the cart and how much you're using. The $2 across the board, that kind of makes up for some of the costs that we're incurring at the compost site and other things. Like I said, that fee from residential collection is the core of our revenue. And so that's why we put that $2 on there to begin with, and then we put the percentage thereafter.
I think it makes sense now. I mean, the spread is more equitable, like per gallon now. So I was just wondering if the previous cost was maybe too low for the small can, in your estimation.
No, I don't think necessarily it was before. Again, you pay as you throw. So those that have the smaller cart, if they're able to use it and use it effectively, they get the incentive of the lower cost.
I know, 'cause I had someone ask about that resident. It's really, so like the compost site, everyone kind of has equal access to that. So some of those fees aren't just based on the amount in the cart. It's just based on our overall user fees. So it kind of goes to, some of it's based, the percentage of that's just based on how much is in that cart and how much it costs to dump it. Some of it's just the general operational cost, if I understood that right.
That's correct.
Mr. Mayor, well, I have to fangirl. This is kind of one of my favorite things. Thank you for the presentation. I hope that, I know there was a part in there that we mentioned doing some more public relations to help people know about this. I think that's really important. I think the more folks that know, you can go out to the yard waste facility and you can get mulch and you can get compost. I mean, I use those things at my house, and I know lots of friends do, but I think there's still people who don't know that. And it's such a great service that we can offer. And there was a mention of tomatoes coming soon, potentially. Keep an eye out. That was from another part of our field trip to the wastewater treatment plant. So really exciting stuff. But yeah, so just, I think that's a great thing to note. And if we can keep our residents informed of that service, I mean, in part, that kind of offsets some of these changes in costs. If you need those things, they're free to you, as opposed to going to the big box store and buying it. So anyways, thanks, Brian.
Yeah, and by the way, we do test, Mr. Smith, he does test our compost annually, just to ensure that we don't have a high concentration of E. coli, or any E. coli for that matter. And every time we've got back the test, they were right in line with some of the permitted facilities that put out really good quality compost. So doing a very good job of getting that material composted.
Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Any other discussion, comments from council? Otherwise, I'll look for a motion to approve staff to move ahead with bringing back the rates as we have proposed here for council.
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. Any further discussion? And any from the public? All right, seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? That motion carries. All right, thank you, everyone. We will now adjourn the committee of the whole meeting. We'll take a quick 5-minute break, let everyone go bathroom, get ready, so we will be back here at 7:20 to get the regularly scheduled council meeting started. So thank you, everyone, for the patience.